and welcome to my latest YouTube video. It's been a while. I've not been on YouTube very much despite creating a channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking about the massive topic of housework, girls being asked to do too much of it, girls wondering why they're being asked to do it and why they're being asked to take responsibility of a household full of people. So there's all this thing around backward in-laws and girls saying that they do this or they say this, and I wanted to address and talk about a specific aspect of it and why some families come across as more backward than others, and where this comes from, and not necessarily how we can get rid of it, because that's not something that we can do on our own, but just generally how and why they come to their way of life, or where it comes from, and how their expectations are formed of other people. We must also remember that when somebody is asking us to do something, it doesn't necessarily make them a bad person, and we shouldn't jump to those conclusions about people. Anyway, a lot of girls message to say that they get married and they move into their husband's home, and suddenly they feel as though they're expected to cater for loads of different people. So you've got your husband's parents, you've got possibly grandparents living there, you've got his brothers, you might have his brother's wife living there, or you have younger siblings living there. And suddenly this girl who's got married feels that I've moved in and I have to do everything, and I have to cook, I have to clean, I have to serve. If I've already eaten or my husband's eaten, the next person that comes to the table, I'm also having to serve them. This is something that, for me personally, I don't mean this in an offensive way, is something that doesn't sit right. I could not imagine that happening in my household. I couldn't imagine it happening to my brother's wives, or me, or anybody in my extended family. It's not something that my family practice, if that makes sense. And even if you go back a generation into my mum's generation, it's not something that used to happen then either. And I just want to add that there are loads of girls who feel the same way, but there's some of them who jump to the conclusion to say, oh, those people are just backward, without fully understanding where the label comes from, or why they act the way that they do, or why women are expected to behave in a certain way around other people. You've got girls saying that I wish that my in-laws were like those in-laws, or I wish that my family were like their family, or I wish my husband was like their husband. And sometimes you have to really go back and work out where these people's expectations come from, where their way of life, how their way of life is formed, where it came from that women were supposed to do all of these things, or where these expectations stem from. I think nowadays a lot of people say that, oh, you're born in the UK, you're raised in the UK, you shouldn't be thinking like this. But it's really difficult if you're a young person and you've been raised in a family with certain values and you're expected to do X, Y, and Z. And there's no point pretending. There are people in the UK who are living lives. There are girls in the UK who got married, and there's girls in Pakistan or other areas back home who've got married, and their lives back home are easier than the girls over here. And usually we expect that living in the UK, our life's going to be better, it's going to be easier, it's going to be more progressive. There's no denying that there are aunties in their 50s, 60s, 70s who expect their son's wife to do everything. It's for them, their children are their retirement plan. So when their son gets married, that's it. The mum can retire now, and the new girl that's living there, like, oh yeah, you're living in our house, and and you're going to look after our family. But sometimes I just think this is the way that our family did these things, and we want these traditions to be passed on because this is what worked well for us. I personally think that if you get married and you were in your mum's house and you didn't do a lot, so I've said this previously in one of my videos as well, I grew up as an only daughter, and my mum never used to ask me to do anything around the house unless we had visitors. I kept my own room neat, but that was really about it. I didn't really cook. I didn't really know how to make anything when I got married. And it wasn't really presented as an issue. Within the community that I grew up, this was the norm. It was normal for girls to, oh yeah, you go to university, you go to work. Why would you know how to cook and clean? That's something that you can learn later on. It wasn't something that you learn to get married. I've heard there's some girls who, as soon as they hit 18 or something like that, their mums will start preparing them for marriage to say, oh, let me teach you how to make this, or let me teach you how to do that. And that's great. I sometimes look back and I think I should have learned those things as well, because my life would have been easier. It's taken me almost 5 years to learn to do certain things. But in some families, it's very much like we're preparing her to take care of someone else's family. And I overheard a conversation, one of the girls who was in one group said to the other girl in the other group, and I think they were friends, and they just bumped into each other, and I think they were trying to explain who their brother was getting married to. And one of the girls said to the other girl that, oh, their family really open-minded, girls don't do housework, so she's going to be going straight back to work. And that really hit a nerve. I thought, why is that modern? What's modern about that? Why are we setting the bar so low where a girl who doesn't stay home and serve everyone is considered modern now? And then I realized we split Pakistani people up into categories. We say that, oh, they're backward, and then they're not backward, they're modern and they're not modern. And every time I went back to Pakistan, I feel like since I've started my page, the whole housework thing is more of a complaint than any of the other complaints that girls were making in Pakistan. So, you know, like you stay at relatives' houses and stuff, you hear people say things and you're like, oh, but none of it was usually about housework. We attended a wedding, one of my cousin's weddings, and his wife moved in with my aunt's family, and we were staying there as well. And I noticed, like, you know how girls message to say, oh, I woke up the next morning and she expected to make me to make like this or do that or serve XYZ person. That never really happened. And I think the reason for that is that there are certain areas in Pakistan where housework isn't a big issue, and in some areas it's actually looked down upon as well. And I have to own up and say that in the area that I'm from, in some parts of it, some families, housework is looked down on. Like, oh, why should we do our own housework? We don't do that. So like, you'll go to people's houses, and even in your average middle class family, people will have 2 or 3 helpers. I don't like calling them knocker, but helpers who will like wash dishes, wash clothes, tidy the house up, do the sweeping, whatever, and basically make the house nice again. So if you've had a dinner the night before as well, people sometimes don't even pick their plates up. Like, the lady who's living there, like the house help, she'll do it. Or if the house help isn't there, they'll leave everything there and say, oh, come on, let's go in the other room. And then the next morning, whoever's coming to sort it out will sort it out. I remember staying with another relative who's got 2 daughter-in-laws. They'd get up in the morning and they wouldn't make their beds. So they'd come downstairs and their house help would go back in their rooms and sort their rooms out for them, get their clothes ready, iron their clothes. They'd come downstairs and they'd simply tell the lady at the stove, the other house help, because there seemed to be like a number of ladies like dotted around the house. And you've got to think that these houses are quite big, like 3-4 story houses. She'd say, oh, can you get this breakfast on for my husband? And the other one would say, can you get this breakfast on for my husband? And how can you get breakfast on for my kids? And she'd kind of just serve it into plates and stuff. So, I mean, essentially she wasn't really doing much, like nowhere near what some of us do for our kids. The reason I'm mentioning this is that those aunties were considered quite nice aunties. Like, oh, I'm sitting here, she's not going to ask me to get up and do something, or I'm just going to be sitting here and she's not going to bother me, she's not going to question why I haven't done anything. And it was kind of the same for their daughter-in-law as well. It wasn't really an expectation. The reason I'm mentioning this is because some of these ladies, and not just from Lahore, from other, you know, from loads of different areas, come to this country and, you know, they kind of have that ingrained in them. So it's like, not things like making your bed and stuff, because obviously house help there is very like broad, like they just do everything. Over here it's like a specific set of duties. Like if you have a cleaner or a helper, she'll know exactly what she's doing at what time. You pay her for the hours that she does and she goes home. So they kind of have that ingrained in them. So they'll come to this country, some of them, like some of my family. It's not always the case. There's some people who live very hard lives at home and came here and realized that they could make their lives better. But I'm talking specifically about women who are used to a certain standard of life in Pakistan, who come here and think we won't survive because we're not used to doing XYZ around the house, or we don't want to do XYZ around the house. It's like one less burden for them to think of, and one less burden for the women in their family to think of as well. Like, we can't deny that there are aunties who like will come to your house for a rishta and will very openly say that you know, housework is not an issue in our house. Like, we have someone to do it, or I do my own and she can do her own, and my elder daughter-in-law does her own and my daughter does her own, and there's nothing like that. But then there are some families who'll come to your house, and if you even like bring the topic up, they'll say, oh, these lot are too modern, or they're too forward, or they're liberal, or, you know, we wouldn't fit in with their family, or this girl isn't right for you, or, you know, she's going to be lazy. And then you've got like another category of women who lived not very easy lives in Pakistan, and some of them came from poverty, and house help isn't really a thing. Like, there's still people who say that if they went back to Pakistan now, that there wouldn't be a washing machine, or there wouldn't be a helper, or even if there was one available, they wouldn't get one. They'd cook all their meals themselves. Life would be very hard, so they don't visit Pakistan, or their elders don't go back to Pakistan. Some of these women came here and they didn't pick that up, and no matter how good their lives have got or how much money they've got, house help just isn't a thing for them. Like, it's considered something that they just don't do. Like, no, in our community we don't get someone to help with our house, we do everything ourselves. And the women in the house, it's their job to keep the house clean, it's their job to cook, to clean, to serve. Obviously this is just one aspect of it, the actual doing the housework, like getting stuff cleaned, cooked, washed, whatever. But things like, you know, girls messaging to say that I'm expected to you know, put food in front of my father-in-law when my mother-in-law is sat there, I personally think that's not right. Like, I just do not understand. Unless they're old, ill, unwell, they should, I mean, a husband and wife are supposed to do things for each other, not, oh, I will get my son's wife to do everything because she's like another body, another pair of hands. Like, that's your husband, why do you want somebody else to serve him? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, like, my point is that, you know, we call some aunties backward, or, you know, we used to call some mother-in-laws horrible, or, you know, she forced me to do this, or she made me do that. But if you actually go back, some of them have worked really hard. Like, they've done some really hard work in their time. Like, things that some aunties simply would think we'd never do that, or we've never done that. And there's no denying that there are some aunties who are 50, 60 and their other aunties are 50, 60. If you put them together in a room, they just wouldn't get on with each other. They wouldn't have anything to talk about. They wouldn't have anything in common, because one set of those aunties are very modern and very ahead, and the other set of aunties are considered not very modern and not very ahead. And they'll be sat there talking about housework or something, and then the other set will be talking about, oh yeah, I did this and I went here and I did that, and my daughter-in-law doesn't do housework. And I think you have to consider that there are aunties out there, my own aunties included, who would say, aajkal kaun ladkiyan ghar ka kaam to nahi kartiyan, and it's just not a thing. Like, I don't know if you're looking at this video now, you might be thinking, who the hell are those aunties? Because we don't know them. And at the same time, I might be thinking, well, who are the other aunties who ask young girls to pick up after everybody in the house? Like, there's definitely a divide, and there's definitely a reason for that divide as well. And there's things that are deeply ingrained in people. And obviously, when you have a mother-in-law, for instance, and she raises her daughter, and she lived life a certain way in Pakistan, and then she obviously raised her daughters in the same way as well. And then for you going into a certain family, it might feel like, oh, but in my family, everything's open and no one's backward. And in this family, look at them, they're all doing this, and I've never seen this in my life. There's like another backward modern thing. Like, there's another thing that's associated with being backward or forward. Like, this whole issue of girls having to sit with their mother-in-laws and keep them company. Like, yeah, it's great. Like, you sit together, you're part of the family, you should engage with each other and interact with each other. It's lovely. But for a guy to say, oh, I'm going out, and you sit with my mom and keep her company, or for a husband to say, I'm going out, or my son's going out, or we're both going out, you sit here with my wife and keep her company because she's lonely. Like, that in my head doesn't make any sense. Like, I was speaking to my dad about this, and and he's widowed. My dad is, obviously, but he said that your udasi, like, your loneliness when you get older. He's like, this is the first time I'm hearing that bahu ne saas ki udasi ko dur karna hai. Like, it's not the daughter-in-law's job to cater for her mother-in-law's loneliness if her husband is present, or if there's children living there. It's like, it's almost as if you're just fobbing off your responsibility to somebody else. And you'll see in some families where elders are going out with each other. You've got like your mother and father-in-law who are going out to different places, going to dinner, going to see the other children, and actually doing things as a couple. And yeah, I say this before as well, like, you see so many English couples who look forward to their retirement, and they look forward to getting old because they can do things together. And I'm sure a lot of girls my age now, who are in their late 20s, would think, actually, when my kids are older and they're married or they've gone to uni or something, that frees up more time for me to do things that I wanted to do when I was younger, but I couldn't because I had to be mentally and emotionally available for my kids. I think independence is one of the biggest freedoms at any age. So if you can independently take care of your stuff, if you can independently take care of yourself, up to a certain age, of course, then that's something that's going to free you from feeling disappointed when someone doesn't do something for you because you're able to do it yourself. Like, there was this girl who messaged and said that my mother-in-law and I fight every day because she wants me to cook 2 or 3 curries, and I don't want to do it because I never did it at my mum's house and I'm not used to it. So from what she described, her in-laws sounded like they were quite well off, and she said it's a big house, it's a 7-bedroom house, and she wants me to clean it every week. And I come from a 2-bed because I live with my mum, and I don't want to do it and everything. And I just said, look, why doesn't your mother-in-law say we'll cook once a week? Because the home cooked food thing, I think a lot of aunties have this thing that food has to be cooked at home. And I know in some families they don't do cooking, like they just order out all the time. Like, even if they want to have something home cooked, they'll order it from outside, and cooking isn't an issue. It's like all being resolved, which is nice. But I said to her, why doesn't your mother-in-law like put her pride aside, or whatever it is, or why doesn't the family think, you know what, let's create harmony, and the money that Allah's given us, we use it to make other people's lives better and to help everyone in our household be happier. So even if that means 3 or 4 days a week, and obviously she was working full time, so that's why she had an issue with it. And even if she wasn't, like, if someone doesn't want to cook 2 curries, they shouldn't be. I've said this before, if I could get out of making curry, my weekly curry, then I absolutely would. To ask somebody to come home from work, stand across the cooker, or to use her days off to cook food, what is the reason? Like, who are you impressing and who are you showing? And it does sound a little bit insensitive, but if your father-in-law wants food cooked and your mother-in-law is able to do it, then your mother-in-law should carry on doing it. Like, to say to a girl, oh, come into my house and cook food for your husband, cook food for me, cook food for my husband. I'm pretty sure she wasn't doing that before she was married. So thinking of her, I just thought, if that was me and food was becoming an issue in our household, I'd just say, look, if we have the financial means, why don't we get food cooked from outside? And you can even get like women nowadays who come to your house and cook food and keep it to the side. And I know a lot of people will be watching this saying, well, that's just dumb, why would we waste our money on that? But it's all about perspective. Like, we waste 50 or 60 pounds on clothes or food that we probably didn't need, or we spend money on things that we don't actually need. I think sometimes elders forget that if we just change one little thing in our house, we could still have the same outcome. Like, we still get to eat curry. Like, if the elder in the family wants a certain meal, and you know, why shouldn't he? He's an elder and he's had a long day or whatever, or you know, just because he likes it, why not? He gets the food that he wants to have. And you know, your daughter-in-law's happier, the mother-in-law's happier, the husband's happier, the marriage is happier, and you've helped everybody. It's just a small change that can make such a difference. I mean, like, another thing is, like, hang on, if you're asking your daughter-in-law to cook food for your husband or to cook food for your son who isn't married to her, so like the whole thing about cooking food for your brother-in-laws, how are they used to her taste? Like, how are they used to what she's cooking? It was really sad. It's quite sad. The other day I got a message from somebody who said she's in her late 30s and she had a rishta, and she said, I'm qualified, I earn a lot of money, I can take care of my parents, all this stuff. And she said, I had a rishta, and it was very clear that the boy's mum wanted house help. Like, she was getting her son married so she could retire and kick back, and that was very clear. And she said, I don't get very many rishta, and I got a rishta and he was good, he had a good job and stuff. She said that it was very clear that they wanted somebody to come and kind of take over in the house, and I obviously want to kick back and, you know, start focusing on having children, but at the same time I don't want to become a maid. And when I said to her, did you not ask? She said, my mum said if I asked, that rishta's gone. Recently, one of my really old work friends got in touch with me to say that she's looking for somebody for one of her relatives, and she said, we're struggling because anyone's house that we go to, the girls just say outright that we don't want to live with in-laws, we don't want to live with parents. And although that's not really like a very nice thing for parents to hear, I get that. It's like, if we normalize these conversations more, like if boys' sides know that they're going to a girl's house and that these conversations will arise, they're less likely to expect them. I think if we just stay quiet, and you know, we've come such a long way. Like, we were young, and some of our mothers or aunties did things that they shouldn't have been doing. But if we're now repeating those same things and not questioning them, like, we want everything else to be modern, but when it comes to like setups and living together and the division of labour in households, that the setup is still something very much which was practiced like 2 or 3 generations ago. I think going forward from this video, I would strongly advise all girls to ask these questions. I know people say, oh, but if we ask, they can just make it up. I think more mothers, like our mothers, for instance, need to be more proactive as well, and, you know, kind of make it a standard where, no, my daughter won't be coming to your house. She'll live with you, but she's not coming to your house to become a maid. Like, it doesn't matter what you did in Pakistan 50 years ago. It doesn't matter what area you're from. I mean, you've got expectations. She's also got expectations as well. And it's about working together to come to a setup which everybody is happy with. And then we've got girls, of course, who say they're part of communities where it's not the norm for girls not to do anything. Like, it's not the norm for mother-in-laws to say to daughter-in-laws, take a day off, or it's quite the norm for girls to go in and start doing everything, and if she doesn't, a complaint will be made to her husband. And I get that, I completely understand it, but how are you going to break out of it? Like, are you just going to live like that forever? Like, what about when your daughter gets married? Are you going to carry it on? Someone has to break the cycle, right? And yeah, I get it, it's difficult. You know, you've got girls messaging saying, I would love to marry into a different community, but I get rejected on the phone because as soon as I ask what area we're from, they're not interested anymore. And it happens quite a lot. People have like rishta aunties on the phone and they try and match people up, and as soon as the elders hear of a certain area, they'll say, no, we're not getting our child married there, thank you very much. I think if we've been blessed with something, like, it's a blessing, isn't it, to be able to grow up. In your eyes, you think, oh, well, that's just my family setup. Like, what's that got to do with God's giving it to me, not giving it to me? But, you know, if we believe that everything is from God, we think that actually if we've seen a setup in our life where girls are not expected to do X, Y, and Z, girls love their culture, girls are happy with the setup, girls aren't forced to do housework, it's not a thing, and, you know, their in-laws are very much independent, they get on great with their in-laws, you know, all these kind of things. If we've been blessed with something, we should use that to help other people. And I think, of course, the biggest thing is for guys who are getting married to say to the parents that, you know, the way you lived isn't the way that we want to be living. And I mean, I always think that a guy who claims that he loves his wife and he's compassionate and he cares for her, why he'd want her to be so tired at night time from serving all of his family members, why that's something that makes him happy. Like, why is it that she has to? I mean, what if she didn't do it? Would you not love her? Like, what if she one day said, I'll do everything for you, which is kind of my duty, I'll do all of your stuff, but I'm not doing anything for anybody else. Like, I don't want to. Like, I don't want to bend over backwards and cook, clean and serve all day, because that's not why I got married. And that never was the purpose of marriage, was never housework. I don't know where this comes from. And you've got girls saying that, oh, I met this guy for marriage and one of his questions were, will you help my mum? I would take that as like a bit of a red flag almost. Like, why has that question come up? Will I help your mum? Help your mum in what? Like, who was doing it before? There's some girls who love like cooking, cleaning, sorting things out, but quite often they risk someone walking all over them. And I think it's quite nice that there's some girls who have such a nice relationship with their mother-in-laws that they do everything for their mother-in-laws, but their mother-in-laws don't like put them down. They're appreciative. They realize that we actually depend on our daughter. Now, there are some setups with girls who are like in their 40s now who got married and they have a beautiful relationship with their husband's mum, where the husband's mother doesn't put them down. It's just, oh, I'm here and can you please give me my tea and my food? And that's quite nice, I think, and it works for some people. But yeah, at the same time, I feel like girls should be a little bit more unapologetic. Like, it's a fact that a lot of guys would say that, you know, oh, this girl's a liberal, or I'm not getting married to her. But at the same time, there's loads of guys where that isn't the norm in their family. Like, you can speak to some guys and they'll say to you, we grew up doing our own stuff. Like, it wasn't a norm in our family for our sisters to serve us. And when our Barbies came along, we never even looked at them to ask them, what have you done today? Or what have you done for us? Or can you do this for me? Or can you do that for me? I think men as well, when they get married, they should have a bit more ownership over their wives. Not just, oh, this is someone that I brought home and everybody can use her for housework. Like, what is she? Is she a servant? Like, where's the respect? Like, I get it, like in the olden days, if you want to call it that, or if you go back really, really far back, it was a thing where a girl would come home and she'd look after the whole family. And there probably wasn't very many complaints either because it was just the norm. I think as well, a lot of girls don't want to venture out into other communities. Same with guys. It's like, there's still people who say they want to marry in the same area and they know full well some of their elders, some of their prospective mother-in-laws or rishta that come to their house aren't going to treat me very nicely. They know that already. Like, before the rishta has even happened, they know this woman is not going to be very nice to me. They know that straight away, but they still pursue the rishta and they still want to get married there. One of our roads to progression, and some families have already achieved this, is to stop making our marriages about housework. It's so petty. Like, girls who are living with their extended families, I feel like if it was taken as more of a bigger thing, like, oh, she's moving in with us, she's leaving her family to come and move in with us, and she's doing us a favour, and oh, isn't she nice? Like, it shouldn't be taken as, oh, that's just culture, because it's culture. It's something that has been passed down, that is so heavily ingrained into us. We think this is the only way of living, that a girl is going to move out and go straight into her husband's home. And if she is, you know, some people have to, or some people want to, or some guys have decided in their head that they don't want to leave their parents. Leave, I say anyway, but you know what I mean, which is fine. But for in-laws to be more accommodating and think, oh, she's moved in with us, she didn't have to do that, she could have said no. But I think far too often it's like, and I hate to say this, but it's like, girls know full well, some of them, not all of them, some of them know that this is going to be the setup after we get married and my husband wants me to do X, Y, Z for his mum, his sister, his aunties, his dad, his brothers, whatever. And you're still going into that marriage without making any questions about it. Of course, the mother-in-law, father-in-law who are there are not going to value you. They're not going to think, oh, this girl stands for anything, because you've tolerated everything. You've come in there, you've gone in there, you've tolerated all their demands, you've done everything that they've said, and now you're trying to change things. Arguments happen because people try and change you, or their expectations don't match what you can deliver. And as a result, you start to fall out. So a man who's getting uncomfortable because you're getting married to him, you're choosing to move into his house, you're leaving your family, which some people would argue, well, that's what girls do, like, you have to go and live in your husband's home. Fair enough, but you're not going in his husband's home, you're going in with his family. And that's like an additional thing that you're doing. It should be looked at as a favour. A lot of us are not burdens on our family. Like, a guy who's getting uncomfortable because you asked a question for your own sanity, to protect your own mental health. How is he somebody who loves you? Doesn't matter how long you went out, because there's plenty of girls who go out with somebody and then they desperately want to marry them because they think, oh, this is the person that I love, and he likes her too. Like, they genuinely like each other, they want to be together. But the issue now is that when he brings her home, she has to perform. She has to, you know, go by the standards that his family have, no matter what area they're from. But she has to do what his family want her to do, otherwise there's going to be an argument. And he wants you to stay quiet. What on earth for? Like, you're the one who's moving. They're the ones who should be more accommodating, I think. It's not to say that you're allowed to trample over somebody's family, you're not. Or to make them feel small. Obviously, when we live in an extended family, you shouldn't act like, oh, it's just me, my husband, and nobody else. I'm not saying that, I'm not advocating for that. But what I'm saying is that your husband-to-be should stand in solidarity with you to say that, oh, this girl is moving in with my family. It should very much be like a situation where the guy marries her for her, not I married you for other people. I feel like a lot of ladies suffer or struggle because they're being asked to do what is beyond their capacity. So their mother-in-law is asking them to do more than what they did at their mum's. She's not doing it in a very nice way. She's being quite condescending about it. And she's expecting that girl to forget all of her own values and to live as per her values. I think it's different if a guy is helping his mum out and his wife helps out as well. Like, and this, I think this is quite rare anyway, but correct me if I'm wrong. A guy who is helping his mum with cooking, cleaning, washing, serving, and then he gets married and says to his wife, well, I want somebody to kind of help me to look after my parents together, so any housework we do is going to be together. That's completely different. Then I guess it feels a little bit more dignified, not that you're staying at home with his mum serving people and feeling a bit like a servant and he's out having a good time with his friends. Just a little observation that I wanted to share. It kind of went a little bit on and on, but yeah, sorry for that. I don't have a script in front of me, as I say, so I'm kind of just talking at the camera. It's a little bit like this, like you look for a job, for instance, and you think, oh, I'm not working there because, I don't know, it's in the job description they're asking me to do this and I don't want to do that, like that job isn't for me. It's kind of like, I'm trying to make a comparison, which probably isn't much of a comparison, but it's like when you get married and you know that housework isn't one of the things that you signed up for. And I feel like a lot of girls nowadays are like that, where they think, oh no, I don't want to be like cooking and cleaning and serving people. And it shouldn't be considered as something that, oh, we've gone so forward that we don't want to do that. It should be more of a thing where guys are also joining in and saying, oh, actually, yeah, that's correct. Like, why should you do that? Like, you're not a maid, you're not a slave. We have more respect for you than that because of all the sacrifices that you're making, and they need to be recognized. So it's like the same thing that when you get married, look for families where this isn't an expectation or isn't something that's obsessed over. Families where it seems like what happens in their house is closely matched to what happens in yours. And if it isn't, raise those questions with your husband to be and ask him what can be changed about it. And if he looks like he's not going to budge, then you've got some serious questioning to do. I feel like in a lot of rush the processes, the girl's parents are asking the guy, you know, what do you do? They're asking the guy's dad, what do you do for a living? And, you know, just general chit chat. But I feel like the conversation of what she's going to be doing, what her role is going to be, because there's a lot of assumptions that people stay quiet because they want to be respectful and no one wants to talk about what's going on in the house. They just want to kind of say, oh yeah, we'll get married and then we'll deal with it later. But it's something that I think needs to be discussed beforehand. The issue arises when, you know, this new member of our family is now going to have all these new roles and responsibilities that she didn't want to have and she didn't know about. Like, she went in and it's a shock and she's getting upset and then she's complaining and then she's falling out with her husband. I think conversation makes a massive difference as well. Like my dad, for instance, I can't say much about my mum because she's not here, and she was from the UK anyway, so her mindset was a little bit different. But my dad, for instance, if I spoke to him 20 years ago about certain things, he'd think that I was chatting rubbish. 20 years later, and he's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, you know, let's do it that way. Or, you know, I think educating our elders is really important, like having these conversations. You know, if your family are the sort of family where it's very obvious that women are doing far too much, or, you know, women are expected to do things that they're not supposed to be doing or they don't want to be doing, it's worth introducing your parents. Because I said this once before in one of my videos that husbands' parents usually see what their son's wife says as an attack. So if it's coming from their own children or their own sons, way before they actually want to get married, it makes a difference. You know, we have lots of different friends from lots of different backgrounds, and we meet lots of different people. You see a setup that you like and you think, oh yeah, that's what I want my family to be like a little bit. It's not going to happen overnight. Like, it might take 10 years before your mum or dad realizes that actually we were doing things the wrong way. But to say, I saw this in this person's house, or oh, they live like that, or even on the television, whatever, having these conversations, these open conversations with our parents to educate them and to raise awareness. Because I feel like sometimes as well, we don't educate our parents out of respect. We keep them in the dark. And then when something goes wrong, they really struggle. And sometimes we have to take responsibility for ensuring that doesn't happen to them and to help them. Like, a lot of our parents don't go out and about. They don't know what's happening out there. They don't know how quickly the world is changing. And it's up to us to educate our parents and to not to just take care of them by making them tea and food and stuff, but, you know, to also educate them and make them aware of things that are happening around them so that they're better placed when they're up against other families. You don't ever want your mum and dad to look stupid, right? Anyway, back to the end of the video. Yeah, that's just an observation that I noticed, is this whole obsession with housework thing that comes up again and again and again. I feel like it's something that's passed down, and it really does depend sometimes on the area that you're from in Pakistan and what values you bring from you, or whatever area back home, which values you bring to the UK. I guess that this goes without saying, is that when we live in the UK, the beauty is that we can kind of form our own culture, keep the things that help us and get rid of those that don't. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and that it provided you with some insight. Just remember, change is always uncomfortable at first and then it gets easier down the line. Take care, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.